Today's band revitalized rock in the disco era when some thought rock was dead and buried for good. Their first two albums lit up the charts and knocked disco down, but then they couldn't release anything for almost a decade. 8 years. It took 8 years for their third album to come out because they were in a lawsuit with their label and they couldn't record. The band beat the label in the lawsuit, but as we all know, 8 years in the music industry is a lifetime. By the time they put out their record, the musical landscape had completely changed. And to make matters worse, someone leaked their rough demo of the new song, their first single, to radio months before it was supposed to come out. But then this band did the unthinkable. Their leaked single went straight to #1, as did their album, and they ruled the mid-'80s just like they did the late '70s. It's a great story filled with a few surprises next on Professor of Rock. Hey music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you've ever bought a brand new album and locked yourself in your bedroom, when you were a little kid or even now, and listened to side A to side B on repeat for hours, telling you this is your channel, make sure that you subscribe below right now, click the bell so you never miss out on any of the episodes of the stories from the legends of rock and roll. We also have a Patreon. There you're going to find more content and additional catalog of exclusive content. You can also become an honorary producer on the videos, and that helps us curate this music history. And don't forget to check out our merch below, including our Vintage Years collection. Now, since 1955, songs with a one-word title featuring the first name of a female has unofficially hit #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 15 times. Now, to clarify, I'm not talking about songs that have more than a single first name, like Judy in Disguise by John Fred and his Playboy Band, or even Michael Jackson's monster hit Billie Jean. Just the singular given name of a female, and we're not even counting Rosanna here because it didn't hit #1. It happened for the first time in 1957 when it happened 3 times, beginning with Pat Boone's double A-side single Love Letters in the Sand and Bernadine.
Oh, 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 Bernadine.
Followed by Tammy, performed by actor Debbie Reynolds.
Tammy's in love.
And then later in 1957, 15-year-old Paul Anka scored a chart topper with his song Diana. The last time a single word title with a female first name climbed all the way to #1 was in 1986. And once again, it happened 3 times that year. Now, the first in '86 was Sarah by Starship.
Sarah.
The name Venus returned to #1 for the 3rd time when Bananarama created its Shocking Blues original 1970 smash. The 3rd time that a song with a female first name went to #1 in '86 on the Billboard Hot 100 was also the last time that it ever happened. And this distinction goes to Amanda, the comeback power ballad for the band Boston. Amanda was written and produced entirely by Tom Scholz, the gangly 6'6" rock and roll savant that formed Boston, and the mastermind behind the band's self-titled LP that became one of the biggest selling albums of all time. Perfectly, just a perfect album. Now, Scholz began developing Amanda clear back in 1980. This was while he was battling a very contentious lawsuit with Epic Records, the label that signed Boston. The war with Epic was just one of the obstacles that prevented Boston from releasing their 3rd LP. There was also a wicked flood that damaged the studio and a massive power outage. Another impediment was Scholz' notoriously obsessive perfection. Tom's painstaking precision not only frustrated the record label, but it also exhausted his bandmates who were forced to work on solo projects and other outside work to make a living while Boston went on an extended hiatus in late '79. By 1981, original Boston members Fran Sheehan and Barry Goodrow officially left the band, with the underappreciated Brad Delp, the band's powerful lead vocalist, hanging on to the hope that Tom Scholz would eventually put the group back together again. Brad Delp accepted session work, including side projects with Goodrow. And Scholes himself pursued ancillary projects. He wanted to produce Sammy Hagar's Danger Zone album, and he had one track titled Run for Your Life ready to go. But actually, Epic prohibited him from officially taking the gig before Scholes delivered the next Boston album. It was brutal. Sammy's Danger Zone LP that was released in 1980, it ended up being co-produced by Sammy and Jeff Workman. You better run for your life, girl. Now, behind the scenes, Scholes worked on new material for what became the Third Stage album, an extended reprieve from the rigors of touring and promoting a new record. It actually suited Tom Scholes just fine. He relished in the isolation. During this hiatus, Scholes secluded himself in his hideaway studio. This is the site where he created the quintessential sound of Boston. That distinctive Boston sound was not, as the expression goes, a happy accident. It was the conclusion reached by Scholes after hundreds of listens to any musical part he recorded, no matter how short or seemingly insignificant. Scholes was fascinated with the process of engineering and design. He never got tired of honing and purifying every single note. The first song that Scholes wrote for the Third Stage album was Amanda. Unlike Marianne that Scholes referenced in his lyrics for More Than a Feeling, he didn't name the song after a real person. Actually, another band member tells us a little bit about that later. But the Marianne in More Than a Feeling was inspired by his real-life older cousin, whom he had a secret crush on growing up. Amanda was chosen as the love of his life because the name fit well with the song's lyrical structure. It's all about syllables, right? As Paul Simon says. Scholes tried other names, but Amanda rolled off the tongue a lot better. Amanda and the other tracks developed by Scholes for Third Stage marked a careful journey into a new era for Boston. I'm sure the music was fueled by Tom Scholes' purist approach of using old traditional rock and roll equipment. I mean, Scholes detested computers, and heaven forbid he wouldn't be caught dead using a synthesizer in his music, but there were some notable modernizations in Scholes' arsenal. For example, Third Stage was the first time that Scholes used electronic drum samples. It was actually the first record to feature Scholes' genius invention, the Rockman guitar processor. Rockman was the result of Scholes' constant experimentation with guitar amplifiers, microphones, and equalizers. Scholes' electronic box gave musicians the capability of modifying the sound of the guitar and other instruments, and it truly revolutionized the recording business. Throughout the verses of Amanda, we hear a chiming effect, like the sound of a church bell, or church bells. It gave the arrangement a gentle touch of romantic sensitivity. That chiming was another example of the technical wizardry of Tom Scholes. The effect was created by the alteration of the sound of an electric guitar plugged into Scholes' Rockman. Scholes played every single instrument on Amanda. That includes the 12-string guitar. The liner notes on Third Stage also credited Scholes with playing lead guitar, bass guitar, grand piano, electric piano, Hammond organ, theater organ, thunderstorms, rocket, ignition, some drums, and unidentified flying objects. Love that. Despite that comprehensive list, though, Scholes managed to bring back some of the old familiar faces to perform on the recording of Third Stage, including Sib Hashian. He was actually fired midway through the studio sessions, and then original drummer Jim Masdia. And actually, I had a chance to speak with Jim about returning to Boston and the experience of working with Scholes on the album and Amanda. That was a little bit of a risk, too, to put the first single out as kind of a power ballad rather than one of your big rockers.
Right, sure. But it worked. That was fine because it made it more broad. It became more of a, you know, it wasn't just a rock and album. It was broader appeal.
There's something I just have to say.
It was leaked early, and I think that kind of gave the fans the taste. It was leaked a little bit, but they didn't get it. So that maybe even drove it. And another thing I remember hearing is the tour. The Third Stage tour was one of the most phenomenal tours in history of music. We had 4 sold-out shows in every city. We were able to work 5 days a week. We would fly in like Tuesday, Wednesday, all the equipment set up, and it was incredibly cheap because we didn't have to break down. We were there for 4 nights.
Right.
Then we'd all fly, get on. We had a corporate jet. We flew home, and we were home for 2 or 3 days. You know, it was amazing. And again, the sold-out shows, it was just amazing. But everyone was worried. They all thought they had sold it as the last tour. It was like the finale tour. It's going to be the last, so people went wild coming out, you know, and selling them out. And then the shows in Boston, it was 9 sold-out shows at the Centrum. No one ever touched that. Frank Sinatra, no one could touch it. We still have that record.
What do you remember about recording Amanda? Do you remember how that track came together?
Amanda is a little different. Again, Sib is involved. On the third album, what happened was Sid started some stuff. Then he left. Tom brought me back. And then Tom discovered a problem, a technical problem. When Sib crashes, he hits his crash cymbal fractions of milliseconds ahead of his kick drum.
Okay.
I naturally hit my kick drum and then follow with the crash. So once Tom started listening to all of the tracks that he recorded with Sid, there were glitches because Tom was using a stereo compressor. The compressor is triggered from the kick drum. So what would happen with Sid is Sid would crash, the crash would start going into the mics, then he'd hit the kick, and it would cause, the compressor would clamp down and cause a glitch. We had to replay all the cymbals. So on the third album, I'm playing all the cymbals on half of it, where Sid is still playing, and then the other half I'm playing everything. It was weird. Tom, it had become all about technology. Again, I'm not proud of, there's some great songs and it's a great album in many ways. But again, it's not the first album. It doesn't have the same feel because Tom was so good with that razor blade that he removed me. He just used me as a drum machine. Instead of being inspired by what I played and then try to play on it, he would alter what I played to make it easier for what he wanted to do.
He plays that solo, the melody, just the melody of the song. And that's kind of interesting because you don't hear that very often. Was Amanda a real person? Or did he just use that?
That would be whether or not it was someone, or I'm sure it's good for tone. It's an easy thing to sing pure tone with the vowel shapes. So I'm sure more than likely he was looking for that than it was someone.
Many have called Amanda Brad Delp's best performance because of his incredible vocal control and his tender conviction on this ballad. Delp's performance prompted Tom Scholz to give his down-to-earth lead singer much-deserved praise. He deserves so much more. In a 1986 interview with Musician Magazine, in fact, Scholz gushed over Delp's incredible ability in the studio. Scholz called Delp a natural overdubber, perfectly matching what has been captured on tape. Actually, Tom would say he was a master at controlling his voice. He could do things over and over again, changing a note and then doing everything else exactly the same. He can sing harmonies with himself, keep multiple vocal parts in his head. Scholl's plan was to use Amanda as the gold standard of excellence to apply to the crafting of every other track for Third Stage. I mean, in many ways, Amanda was an ego track for Scholz to prove to himself and to the world, really, that he could replicate the magic of Boston's phenomenal debut album. So the ongoing lawsuit between Tom Scholz and Epic Records, it reached a boiling point in early 1984. Exasperated by Scholz' delay in delivering Third Stage, Epic inflicted every tactic that they could think of to force Tom Scholz' hand, including freezing the band's royalties earned from the first two albums. Really low. Scholz refused to compromise, though, and he held out for the verdict. The lawsuit was finally settled when U.S. District Court Judge Vincent L. Broderick ruled in favor of Tom Scholz and Boston. They were allowed to record their third album on another label, not on Epic. At long last, nearly 8 years after the release of Don't Look Back and almost 12,000 hours of studio time, anxious fans were able to get Third Stage when it came out in September of '86 on MCA Records. By the time the much-anticipated album dropped, millions had already heard Amanda, the lead single from Third Stage. I guess a demo of Amanda was leaked to some album-oriented rock-formatted stations via syndicated satellite feed. It was sort of a bootleg, really. Scholz and Delp, the two principals of the Boston Revival, worried that this bootleg airplay was going to be a disaster, especially since Scholz was such a stickler for perfection. And the demo of Amanda was exactly that, a demo. It's unmixed and unmastered.
Kind of got a grubby little clause on this from Rock Hits 94 YSP, Amanda.
Even though the demo had really bad audio quality, listeners were so excited just to hear a new song by Boston that the demo of Amanda became the most requested song at every station that dared play it. The bootleg version of Amanda turned out to be a detonator for new Boston mania. After all, not many bands could survive an 8-year absence, especially one that had only released 2 albums. You think about that. But hey, Boston was different. That sound, it's just magic. Now, a cease and desist was quickly issued to all stations that were playing the demo, leaving the audience starving for more. MCA moved at warp speed to get the finalized Amanda out to radio, and when the Scholz-approved single hit the airwaves, it moved immediately to power rotation on its way to #1 at Mainstream Rock for 3 weeks, and it actually went to #1 for 2 consecutive weeks on the Billboard Hot 100 overall. And of course, Amanda was another immaculate Tom Scholz production with the incomparable Brad Delp delivering just a phenomenal vocal. It was a song about the expression of unfettered love that re-energized just another band out of Boston and put him back on the perch as one of America's greatest rock groups. Third Stage rocketed to #1 on the Billboard album chart, selling nearly 5 million units after 8 years out of the limelight. Although it was a triumph for Scholz and Delp, the euphoria didn't last very long. The next chapter for Boston was, as baseball legend Yogi Berra would say, deja vu all over again. It took 8 more years for Boston to release 4th album, Walk On, and they would do so without Brad Delp. Blasphemy! He actually left the band over issues with Scholz and rejoined his old friend Barry Goodrow to form the group RTZ. Until your love comes back around. Unfortunately, RTZ floundered, and Boston, with Fran Cosmo as the new lead singer, they'd lost their magic. Like a big plate of comfort food, though, Amanda takes us back to the power ballad period of the rock era. Emotionally charged songs that made us sing to the top of our lungs, albeit in private. If I tell you today, will you turn me away? Now whenever I hear those beautiful 80s ballads on the radio, I never change the channel. Even when I hear it on those 80s compilation infomercials from Time Life, it puts a lump in my throat, and I long to travel back to that carefree time in the 80s. Amanda ranks as one of the best power ballads from that time. The track is a shining example of uncompromising artistic integrity by its creator, Tom Scholz, and a showcase of Brad Delp, one of the all-time greatest rock vocalists who took us as listeners to levels that couldn't be put into words. They were just more than a feeling. Sorry, I couldn't resist it. It's true, though. And thanks so much for watching. Leave us a comment about Boston and their 80s power ballad, Amanda. What do you remember about this song? You know, what has it meant to you? What do you remember about waiting 8 years to get this album or to hear this song? New stuff from one of the greatest bands ever. If you dig our content, take a second to subscribe below. That way you'll never miss out on our daily videos. We'd love to have you as part of this community. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends. Talk to you soon.